This is Emily Austin from the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee. Welcome to Faithfully Memphis. This is our weekly hour here on WYXR in Memphis and on our Faithfully Memphis podcast, where we get to talk to interesting people and get inspired by the work that they're doing in the world. I am delighted today to have on a good friend, a good person for anybody to know, Marvin Stockwell. Hey, Marvin.
Good morning, Emily. How are you?
I'm doing really good. You know,
Fantastic.
normally as the Minister of Communication for the Diocese of West Tennessee, I am behind the panel every week for Faithfully Memphis, but today I'm behind the microphone. But I was just telling you right before we started that everything I ever learned about media and, you know, putting on a smile for the people, I learned from Marvin.
That's right. Our third, I was there 13 years, but just our years at Church Health were really formative, and such a pleasure to be back talking with you this morning. Yeah.
So a little background. I split my time now between Church of the Holy Communion in Memphis and the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee, where I support Bishop Phoebe and the diocese in the communication role. But before I settled into my current jobs, I was at Church Health for many years.
Yeah.
And Marvin was the person who I remember a Zoom call many years ago. I was living in North Carolina at the time, and you and our good friend Jeff Hewlett took a chance on this rando girl in North Carolina.
And you were a godsend. I mean, that was the way that team came together at Church Health, and the way you came in and took over our social media was incredible. It was definitely a grace to transit.
Well, I think that communications and being able to serve a higher purpose, and good grief, Church Health, if you're talking about a higher purpose right now, over the last 18 months, but certainly over the last, 30 years that Church Health has been operating in Memphis, talk about vocational work. I certainly kind of rooted out what it was that I wanted to do with my life and my career from working there and now working for the church. And that's kind of a good, I love a good seg. I love a good seg. Today, we're celebrating Florence Nightengale in our Episcopal cycle of prayer. Today is the feast day of Florence Nightengale, and so I am delighted to talk a little bit about Florence, who I think everybody knows a little bit about Florence Nightengale. Like, what's the first thing that pops into your head, Marvin?
Nursing. Yeah,
nursing. Crimean War, maybe something about the Red Cross, but when I looked at our liturgical calendar for the Episcopal Church, I was kind of taken aback when Florence's name popped up. But when I started, digging into her a little bit, she's sort of my new hero. Florence Nightengale was born on May 12, 1820 during the Victorian era, and she died on August 13th, 1910, and she was a British social reformer, statistician, and the founder of modern nursing, and she came to prominence serving as manager and training of nurses during the Crimean War, and throughout her life, she gave nursing a favorable reputation. What's wild to me, considering how much we love nurses and know how much they carry our healthcare system here in the United States and abroad, we know that now. But during the time in which Florence Nightengale was prominent, being a nurse was kind of a throwaway career.
Really, before the modern era of professional.
It was, I mean, it was a throwaway job. And she grew up in a family where, you know, her parents wanted to, even though her parents educated her and she was very, very capable from an early age, they wanted to marry her off. And when she said, no, my calling is to care for people, they recoiled. They were not on board with that at all. But she was like, nope, this is what my calling is. And so in 1860, she laid the foundation of professional nursing with the establishment of her nursing school at St. Thomas's Hospital in London. And she's also, you know, I think we both know she's really known for her contribution to modern nursing, and that cannot be understated.
Yeah.
But as a communicator and someone who knows the power of information, I am so taken with how she engaged with the public. She was a prodigious writer. She thousands and thousands of letters and books over the years, and some of her tracts that she wrote during her lifetime advocating for public health policy were actually written. She wrote them in simple English so that they could easily be understood by those with poor literary skills. She really felt that it was important for everybody. Yeah,
I was just going to say, we both, I'm Catholic, and so it's amazing how many saints are kind of like in the canon of these towering figures that are in history. I like to read the lives of the saints, and really it's less in modern saints, Dorothy Day and the Catholic worker movement.
Absolutely,
it's a matter of they're not. I think it's more, you read them in the miracles are in there, but I think what's almost as interesting, if not more, are the everyday stories of how they moved through the blocking and tackling, found their vocation, and then captured that in writing that we can all appreciate. Because it's like it connects me to people who lived at different times, such that we share a common human nature, and they had struggles just like we did.
They were people just like us. Okay, do you want me to hit you with a most charming anecdote that you're going to hear today?
Yeah, hit me with it.
Okay, so I did not know this until I was doing my research on Saint Florence. Even, you know, she's not a canonical saint, but I'm going to call her Saint Florence.
I love it.
Okay, so she was an extremely well-traveled person throughout her entire life, and when she was a young woman, she spent some time in Athens, Greece. And during that time, she rescued a little owl from some kids who were just tormenting it and not being kind to it. So she rescued this little owl, and she named the owl Athena. I mean, I can only imagine that she named it after the place where she found it, which was Athens.
Yeah.
And after that, she carried the little owl in her pocket for the rest of her life, and she did, and like for the rest of the owl's life. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like how, you know, and I think about the modern practices of nursing. I have no idea if she carried her owl with her to the Crimea, but we think about how in modern healthcare we know that animals really make a difference, and they can be used in patient care. And I don't know, there's something about that. I want to believe that
therapy dogs.
I want to believe that she saw her little owl as a therapy owl.
Wow.
But she's just like you and me. I'm obsessed with my rabbits, and I think that I would have them here in the studio with me if I could right now. But
I love it.
But so she was just a really amazing person. And of course, she's mostly known for her work during the Crimean War, which was a war that was fought during the Victorian era. And when she and her team of fellow nurses were called in, they were pretty much, they were the ladies in the room. And the folks in authority really wouldn't have much to do with them until the situation got really dire, and they realized, okay, well, we need to be taken care of by these women. Her team.
Sorry, I feel like I should apologize on behalf of men.
No. I mean, I think we all know that you're one of the good ones, but it's sometimes when you walk in the room, you're going to get written off right away.
Yeah.
Her team found that the poor care for wounded soldiers was being delivered by overworked medical staff in the face of official indifference, and medicines were in short supply, hygiene was being neglected, and mass infections were common, and most of them were fatal. There was no equipment to process food for the patients, and yet these women embraced in her solitude the sick of 3 armies. During her first winter in the Crimea, over 4,000 soldiers died, and 10 times more soldiers died from illness such as typhus, typhoid, cholera, dysentery than from battle wounds. Those are just diseases that the place was filthy. And with overcrowding, defective sewers, and lack of ventilation, the Sanitary Commission had to be sent out by the British government to Scutari in March 1855, almost 6 months after Nightingale arrived. And yet she raised her voice. She said that the death rates were due to poor nutrition, lack of supplies, stale air, and overworking of the soldiers. Like she was pretty insistent that we can do something about this.
Yeah.
And so after she returned to Britain and began collecting evidence before the Royal Commission on the Health of the Army, she came to believe that most of the soldiers at the hospital were killed by poor living conditions. And this is the part where I, as a person who I have an active presence, it's my job to get the word out and to show that injustice is happening. Things that we can turn back from them are happening. She created, and you can Google this image, she basically created the first modern effective infographic. She created an image to show that these death rates were just, it was all due to poor conditions that could actually be reversed. And that was the linchpin. She got people to take notice by creating what's known as let me find it in my notes, the Rose histogram. And if you look at it, it's readily available on Wikipedia and on Google image search it. If you look at it, it's the kind of graphic that you would see in on social media or today, and it can really, really change minds. So I'm just, I think about that and the fact that she was so committed to writing in a way that people, the average person could listen.
That's a gift.
Yeah, she made a difference in a major, major way. She's described
incredible
as a true pioneer in the graphical representation of statistics and is credited with developing a form of the pie chart now known as the polar area diagram, or occasionally the Nightingale-Rose diagram. So, we're talking, she did a lot of really great things, but, I think that in order to get, a day of the church named after you, you have to have, some striking thoughts on God and the way that God works in the world. So a little bit about her theology. She remained in the Church of England throughout her life, and she viewed her calling to nursing as a call from God. But she had some unorthodox for the time views. I mean, maybe they were unorthodox for our time. I don't know. I think they're pretty great. But she was influenced from an early age by the Wesleyan tradition. And she felt that genuine religion should manifest in active care and love for others. She was a believer in universal reconciliation, and she believed that, and this is a quote from her, "The real God is far more merciful than any human creature ever was or ever can imagine." And despite her intense personal devotion to the Christian church, she believed that for much of her life that the pagan and Eastern religions had also contained genuine revelation. She was a strong opponent of discrimination, both against Christians for different denominations and against those of non-Christian religions. So,
good for her.
God is...
We need more of that tolerance in today's world, for sure.
We do. So, I was really... It was a blessing to me that it so happened that I get to host Faithfully Memphis and do this research on Florence Nightengale, and I encourage everyone to get to know a little bit more about her, because she is certainly more than the top 3 bullet points that we tend to all know about her.
Wow.
So this is our prayer in honor of the feast of Florence Nightingale. O God, who gave grace to your servant Florence Nightingale to bear your healing love into the shadow of death, grant to all who heal the same virtues of patience, mercy, and steadfast love, that your saving health may be revealed to all, through Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
And we're back. Thanks for tuning in to Faithfully Memphis on WYXR or the Faithfully Memphis podcast. Again, I am delighted to have a good friend and someone who has been a real just inspiration and mentor for me over the years on the show today, Marvin Stockwell.
Thank you, Emily. That's kind of you to say that.
Well,
I'm glad to be here.
It is all, there's a lot of, if I was going to tell the history of my life, I think that you would get a line in there somewhere.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm honored.
I'm so delighted to have you on. Marvin, so let's start at the very beginning of the Marvin story.
Sure. So I grew up, thank you. I grew up in Memphis. I'm a native Memphian, and I grew up as a Catholic, going to St. Michael Catholic Church on summer. And I was an altar boy, and I came up at a time in the 70s, which was really the kind of like folk mass period, if you will. So it was in that time. Immediately following the Church's Second Vatican Council, which really ushered in modern reforms, the Mass in the vernacular language. Before that, it had been in Latin. When the Catholic Mass was brought into the modern day, the Church's responsibility to act in the world was also mapped out in the Second Vatican Council. It's funny, my mom and my grandparents were actually at the opening ceremonies of Vatican II in Rome, and I've seen pictures of that. So that's kind of my grounding. And if in the 70s, when I went to Mass, you had priests who had been steeped in the old way of doing the Mass in Latin, and they were having to adjust and learn how to say Mass in English, and it was very jarring. But I didn't know that as a kid going to St. Michael. Yeah. I just realized that I'm a post-Vatican II kid that grew up at St. Michael, went to CBHS, and then the University of Memphis, and then I toured for years in Pez, the touring band, before.
Yeah, you're kind of a big deal. You're kind of a rock star.
Well, you're kind, but years of touring prepared me well for a brief stint in journalism and on public radio before I segued into landing at Church Health in 2004 as their communications guy, and then along the road to my 13 years there, I built a team of folks. You were a part of that.
Yeah,
and it was
amazing group of people.
It was an incredible time in my life, and it was the opportunity, quite frankly, for me to, in a really direct way, live the gospel, because right there in the Gospels is caring for the sick. And so I'm not a medical professional, but I used my skills as a communicator to build the messages that got Church Health's word out to serve people and to raise money. For the last 4 years, I've been at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital as their media relations director. I left there at the end of May, and it was and what I've been doing, we can get into this in a second, is really an effort to bring a project off the back burner that I've been working on the last couple of years, which is Champions of the Lost Causes.
Yes.
I got with my work on the Coliseum and the Fairgrounds, which we can touch on in a minute. I got really curious about why people champion causes, and what motivates them, what sustains them, and what helps them succeed.
What's that origin story?
Well, I just at the 4 years in, Mark, of working on things to first save and now working with the city to reopen the Mid-South Coliseum. I got curious as to why I had the fire in the gut for 4 years, and now we're at the 7-year mark. But and then at my time at St. Jude, it was really obvious to ruminate on the Danny Thomas origin story. Danny Thomas championed the cause of pediatric cancer, and the world is glad that he did. And so now it's time for me to take what I've learned at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and in the civic side of my life, and really apply it to where I see the greatest need. That is I've worked at the large St. Jude, mid-size Church Health, and small end of the nonprofit spectrum, founding my own grassroots nonprofits in the Coliseum Coalition and Friends of the Fairgrounds. And I've seen how the different pieces of the publicity toolkit work at all those different levels. And
you've also seen people you care about benefit from those different outreach projects that you've had. I mean, you also you helped to found Rock for Love, which was a long-running music festival at church, benefiting Church Health, and it primarily benefited musicians who are served by Church Health and
lacking healthcare.
Exactly. And you also live here in Memphis. You and I both have a lot of peers and friends in common. We know people who have benefited from Church Health, and we also live and work in the neighborhoods around the Fairgrounds, and we have memories around those places, and we know that revitalizing this amazing civic place will revitalize our community in important ways. So I feel like that is when you see so many people that being touched by that work, that's really definitely a strong carrot at the end of the stick, isn't it? It's
really been the place and occasion for me to really get to know those stakeholder neighborhoods right around the Fairgrounds, and really meet my neighbors in Orange Mound. I live in Humes Heights, which is over near the Fairgrounds. But Cooper Young, and just seeing how all that is stitched together over the backcloth of the history of the decisions around the Fairgrounds that the city of Memphis has made based on how things played out. So in my I got really interested in why people champion causes, and then I saw other examples of that, and then it's what I've seen is the small to grassroots part of the nonprofit spectrum is really where my heart is, and it's really the least well-resourced segment of that continuum. So the focus of my efforts has been in both searching for job opportunities, working on projects, and bringing champions of the lost causes off the back burner, has been in encouraging and equipping those frontline civic actors to affect change. Doing that by training them on what they need to know in terms of communicating their message back to Florence Nightengale. It's doing the work, but it's also capturing it and telling that story so that it can resonate. So that's a lot of ground to cover, but that's where my focus has been is on those civic actors and what they do, and most recently it has been around the Coliseum.
Yeah, and I know that there's a small but very strong, well-knit community around that. The uplifting the Coliseum, and I think that in just knowing a little bit about the intentionality that is placed around what role everyone plays. It's taught me a lot. Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Working on back in the fall of 2014, it came out in the paper. Coliseum was going to be demolished, for making way for a tourism development zone redo of the Fairgrounds, and we didn't think that was a good idea. And so
naturally,
we as a group of advocates kind of sprang forth from crisis, and we made a decision early on to keep things positive. And to not let it our best to not let it devolve into mudslinging, and that's not easy to do. We kept things respectful with then Housing and Community Development Director Robert Lipscomb. I worked with Robert most closely, and to his everlasting credit, we had a good working relationship all along the road of us making the case that people, in fact, love the Coliseum and didn't want to see it demolished. And in fact, it would. Now there have been two studies, assessments of the building. One is the one we did, the Coliseum Coalition, and the other was the city. The city did its own assessment, and now we have two studies that show that that the building is in excellent shape, and the Allen and Hoschel assessment did one other thing. If you're a fan of the building, and it showed that it would cost between $8 and $10 million to demolish it. So the way things sit for anybody approaching it is, who would take a beloved building that two separate assessments have shown is in excellent shape, and
kind of like the building that we're sitting in right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're taping this at WYXR at Crosstown Concourse in the Concourse neighborhood.
So, who would demolish a building like that? That two separate assessments have shown is in excellent shape. Everybody loves, and it would cost between $8 and $10 million to demolish. Memphis doesn't have that money. It would require money from outside, and usually, in my experience, people who spend that kind of money are usually in the business of saving a building or repurposing it, and that's exactly what happened here at Crosstown Concourse. Is that you found good-hearted, wealthier individuals that investors that had a vision for this building, and thanks to the people who brought the building back from the brink. I mean, it is really, truly a wonder to behold. It's like I sometimes pinch myself. I can't believe we're in here. But I think, and a lot of people point to the Coliseum and they say, if Crosstown Concourse is possible, then you can't tell me that the Mid-South Coliseum it doesn't deserve a second act. And so now where things stand is we're working closely with the city we're partnering with them on VIP tours to potential investors and other technical experts to find that third-party investment. And that's where the city of Memphis and those of us in the grassroots are most aligned, is in that we all know that it's going to require third-party investment.
When I have the benefit of having known you for a lot of the time that you've been working on these projects and these different chapters of your professional and life, and I'm also sitting here thinking about and trying to etch out, well, where is faith and where is God in that? And I do have the benefit of knowing you and knowing that you are a person with a lot of tenacity. Thank you. You will stick with it, and you have stuck with it.
Where does that come from?
Where does it come from? And also, is it just me, or do you see that as analogous with a faith journey? Because I can see that thread where, we see that seed that God plants in us to really create something, to use us to create something beautiful and to create something that is so much bigger than us. I don't think, we're talking about Florence Nightengale. I don't think that she wanted to just help the people in front of her, but she revolutionized the practice of nursing and healthcare. Yeah,
she championed the cause of that, and look at what she did. And I think people who champion causes come in all different sizes.
Yeah.
When St. Jude opened in '62, the cure rate for acute lymphoblastic leukemia was like 4%. It's now 94%. So but Danny, even though he was famous, he started just telling anybody who would listen. Yeah. Same thing with Dr. Morris and Church Health. And our cause is not nearly as grandiose as St. Jude, but it's still important to real people.
It is.
So, but to get to your question about mapping over the faith journey, that's exactly right. I feel like we I'm very much a person that believes that we're the church at work in the world.
Yeah.
The body,
big, I like to call it the Big C Church.
The
Big C Church.
And I think that we have a responsibility to continue God's ongoing redemptive work of the world, and that's not always easy. It does, for me, it does stem from a journey of faith that has been focused on not only finding my vocation, but finding my way that I can be a useful member of the body of Christ on earth, continuing that redemptive work. Because we as faithful people, if we believe we have the indwelling Holy Spirit, and so I do, and to sync that up with people who believe differently is fine. There really is a common denominator of goodness.
Yeah.
Pope Francis was meeting with a president of some Central American country. I'm going to forget which country it was or the president's name. Staunch atheist, and what Pope Francis said was he was this leader was relieved that Pope Francis didn't. I mean, he's talking to the Pope. The Pope's you're gonna lean in and like but what Pope Francis said is he set the guy at ease, and he just said, "Let us meet on the common field of good works." And that's the common denominator that unites secular humanism and all varieties of faith, because at the end of the day, I believe in that God has been broadcasting, if you will.
Yeah. I see what you did there.
The message of all-inclusive love since the beginning of time, and lots of people inspired by that have tried their best to faithfully get that down.
Yeah.
And those have become the world's religions and thought systems. And so back to Florence Nightingale, she saw truth in the pagan religions. And there is residual truth in all faith paths, and so I think we have the world, especially with being able to evaluate things on the internet now. All religions sit next to each other side by side on the internet. This is no longer 1911 where G.K. Chesterton is writing The Everlasting Man and pulling together. That was his treatise on comparing side by side all the world religions and coming up to his own mind, making up his own mind as to what he saw as kind of the one, but the everlasting man was written once he joined the church. But I think the reason I like orthodoxy so much, it was then when he was still doubting what path, and so he lays them all out. Well, we as moderns, we have all that at our fingertips. And so modern people see the common threads, and we see our common humanity, then it becomes, how do you apply it?
Yeah.
How do you apply it?
What can we do? Well, who shall I send? What can I do?
Yeah.
We've all got something in us that we can contribute to making these lives that we've been given, a little bit better for every person that we encounter.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, that takes the shape of a lot of different things. Uh-huh. But I'm really lucky now that I get to talk to people who are doing different things to bring that light into the world. And regardless of what, under what flag they're doing it, I'm really grateful to be able to see how each of us have something to contribute, and the work that we do is good.
There's a common denominator, and our time at Church Health, the strength of Church Health was all people of all different backgrounds coming together and working towards that working within that common denominator for the common good. And that's, I guess, has been the consistent thread of my entire life, and trying to live that out as best I can with the gifts God's given me.
Marvin, one of the things that something that you do that I have picked up on over the years is that you describe yourself as a glass overflowing optimist.
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
Glass overflowing optimist.
What would you say to people who may not see themselves as an optimist? I mean, I think that after I want to couch it and saying, after the 18 months we've had, we're not out of the red at all. I think we're still in pandemic times. Our children go to the same school, and so we are both kind of on edge about what, we're recording this during the first week back at school, and the Delta variant is on the rise. It's kind of scary.
It is tough.
I see myself as an optimist too. Mm-hmm. And I realize that that's kind of a personality trait.
Sure.
How do you think how can we be there for folks, and sometimes that's myself, where it gets real cynical and there's not a lot to couch ourselves in? I mean, I know that, in the work that we do during nonprofits and in our work in our lives, there are going to be chapters where we are in a slump and things are not getting done. The calls that we are wanting to make with those key stakeholders are not getting returned. We're not getting the grant that we need. The big meeting it comes on the same day as a family emergency, and we have to cancel it, and because the big stakeholder can't reschedule.
Yeah.
What do you say to people when they're in those slumps? Because it's not an issue of if, it's an issue of when.
Yeah. The world is in turmoil. So it is hard. It's hard to be hopeful. And let me say this, like, that's my brand is like glass overflowing optimist, PR guy, ombudsman of Memphis. But that's how people know me. But like, it's not reality to think that I don't have down moments. It's that would be inhuman, and I think that also plays into social media posting. It's like I'm a highlight reel poster, and that's
toxic positivity.
That is really tough. People should know. No one can stay positive all the time, and this is an especially tough time to remain positive. We're going through the transition with the coronavirus that I lived through, working with the infectious diseases clinicians and researchers at St. Jude, and learned way more than I ever thought I would know about viruses. Incredible. Back to science. Science is really incredible, and I know that better now after 4 years at St. Jude than I ever did before. But it is a tough time to be an optimist, but it's not impossible, and I think we all have a general kind of like setting, and so I tend toward optimism, and I tend to see the glass overflowing with possibilities. But I think the world needs both types. We need need both people who are optimists and people who are pessimists. One of the things that I get to in Champions of the Lost Causes, my book.
We got to talk about the book in the podcast for sure.
Is that there are really two types of leader that emerge in civic movements, like cause movements, and people typically like fall somewhere on the spectrum, as I've observed. And one I'll call the diplomat, and the other the skeptic. Well, I know it won't surprise you they're like embedded within the Coliseum Coalition. I am our group's diplomat, and my friend Roy Barnes is my great skeptical counterweight, and the diplomat trusts too much, but the skeptic doesn't trust enough. But they strike the balance, and they trust but verify, and it provides
trust and verify. Yeah,
it provides causes, people working on causes with a stereoscopic depth perception. If we're told information by the city, I accept it right away because I tend to believe people. Roy, as the skeptic, will go investigate something in a public record or get a second take from a city council person, and so the version of what we're told on the other side is much more useful once it's grounded in it's been corroborated.
Yeah.
And so what happens in those, and you can read people the same way. I see people's aspirational motivations more clearly, and a skeptic sees someone's selfish motivations more clearly, and together they see things more clearly together than they see them apart. And I think it really takes both types. It takes those people in the early stages who say, we can do this, and it takes people to go behind and batten down the hatches and nail down the particulars, and really make sure that it all works. And if you look at any nonprofit, I think you'll see that division of labor from prophetic, not comparing myself to Jesus or anything, but
there's the person who really sees the fullness of what the project could be, who sees, and is able to articulate that in a way that inspires others.
Yeah, it keeps the winds of the sails of the group full, and it paints a more beautiful narrative. You could argue that that God is the greatest champion of all.
Yeah.
In that God continues to champion the cause of humanity.
Yeah.
And that is incredible to kind of see how all other temporal causes that we champion fold into a bigger one, because in the end analysis, we the causes we choose to champion in our personal lives and in our civic life are all a choice to champion the cause of our precious lives, and make it and hopefully make it a gift back to God in the same way that Florence. I mean, look at the difference that Florence Nightingale made in the world, and it's like that was a part of the world's redemption that doesn't happen without her.
And look at the way we can all positively affect others. I mean, it's easy to lift her up, but we're all doing important transformative work. You know, I am so intrigued by the butterfly theory that, you know, if a butterfly flaps its wings, it could, you know, initiate a hurricane halfway around the world. And I mean, that's kind of destructive, and I don't know the stability of the theology around it, but I think about the power we all personally wield to lift others up. I mean, as parents, we've got these little humans that we are raising up, and hopefully we don't screw them up too bad. We're going to screw them up, but hopefully it's not in a way that it will be that destructive. We can, with the choices that we make every single day, we can choose to support businesses that we know are giving back. We can give someone a call or shoot them an email who might be in a dark spot. We can choose to care for ourselves and take a moment for self-care, because, you know, God wants us to take care of his creation, and we are his creation. And so sometimes just taking a pause to rest ourselves and not necessarily indulge ourselves, but care for ourselves. And it just, even if that ripple effect is not, you know, worth highlighting in a bar graph or in a infographic, we still can have a choice. We have choices that we make every single day, and those choices cumulatively can help us create a world that's worth living in for every single creature here. That's
well put.
I'm amazed with just, you know, we live in a community that is very, very giving. I mean, we like to pat ourselves on the back and say that, you know, Memphis is one of the most giving places in the nation. But we also live in a place that's very unjust, and we see that every day. I think that, you know, white cisgendered women like me, I had my eyes opened up in a way that they had not been opened up before 2020. And now I see how the things that I view as an injustice are others, you know, our black and brown brothers and sisters and siblings. That's what they're living every single day. And so, what I can do is contribute to a community that helps, that's where I am a helper.
And we have our challenges to face, just like Florence Nightingale faced in her time, different challenges. And as a Gen X, you know, married white male, I have had to learn about my privilege and microaggressions, and we all have a lot to learn, and we all have a lot to a lot of work to do. I went through the National Civil Rights Museum's first cohort of Unpacking Racism for Action. And it was an intentionally diverse cohort of people who looked at these issues and faced them. First, we broke bread and had dinner together, and then we steadily marched through all these issues. It was a facilitated thing, and I'd encourage anybody to look into it through the National Civil Rights Museum. But it's and before that, I went through Wendy Thomas's Common Ground. Now, in the end, those are only those are classroom setting things where I feel duty bound to educate myself, and especially in the city of Memphis and the unique history we have. I have a duty and an obligation as a white person to do my part, and I will. I'm not perfect. It's easier for me to be optimistic. I have had lots of things handed to me, and I think any examination of conscience and an examination of your life, I certainly see that. The generational accrual of wealth. I don't walk around thinking about myself having benefited from that, but it doesn't take long to look and see that.
Yeah. Well, I hate this. We're actually almost out of time.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know. It goes way too fast.
I know, and we covered too much ground. I feel like.
I mean, bonus episode maybe. You should and that's a good seg. I already said I love a good seg. Definitely. Thank you all for tuning in to Faithfully Memphis today. If you liked what you heard, please share the show. We are broadcasting live today from WYXR, so check us out there. But also find the Faithfully Memphis podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to podcasts on Apple, your Episcopal Minister of Communication begs of you to please like us and leave us a positive review, because then we can get to share, then more people will learn about us. Marvin, you have a podcast too.
I have a really quick plug.
Yeah, plug away.
ChampionsoftheLostCauses.org is a website that has access to where my podcast currently lives. There's an event at the Memphis Listening Lab here in Crosstown Concourse, August 20th and 21st, a weekend of events that I'm going to be a part of, in sharing more of where my podcast is going to live going forward. It's been under construction, as they say. Yeah. But yeah, championsoftheLostCauses.org is the website, and so I would encourage people to check it out, and watch for things.
I would encourage people to check it out. It's
coming soon
stuff
at the Coliseum. Thanks so much for having me on, Emily.
Oh, man. Thanks, Marvin. This was great. And from all of us here at the Episcopal Diocese of West Tennessee, stay safe and stay positive.